Hello everyone, welcome to Crafty Garden and a special mini tutorial on how I knit colorwork. So a couple things up front. You can see here I've illustrated what I'm going to talk about today. Don't make fun of my little finger drawing. So I'm going to talk about knitting stranded or Fair Isle Colorwork Continental. And continental meaning I'm carrying the yarn on my left hand over my pointer or index finger. Okay. This is an illustration of the row that I'm going to be demonstrating. I have orange representing this light brown color, and I have black representing my black. So what I'm going to start with is 9 stitches of light brown, 7 stitches of black, 9 stitches of light brown, and then 11 stitches of black. You can see that these are all really long sections of just using one color. So what I've demonstrated is these little places where I'll trap right in the middle. The longest section I have is 11 stitches, and if I had if I was, let's say I needed like 15 or more black stitches without putting any of the other color in there, then I might trap multiple times. I might trap like every 3 stitches or something like that. But for what I'm demonstrating today, trapping once in the middle is sufficient. So you can see that for the 9 stitches, I've centered the trap. So I'll knit 4, trap on the 5th, knit 4, and all of these just happen to be odd numbers, which makes that trap fall perfectly in the center. If you have an even number of stitches, that's not going to quite work the same. So if I made this 8, I could knit 3 and then trap here and then knit 4, or I could knit, or the correct way is this way. I could knit 4 and then trap and then knit 3, or like I was saying, knit 3, trap, and then knit 4. But because the even number of stitches, it won't fall perfectly in the middle. That totally, it doesn't matter. I wouldn't worry overly about that, because it's just doesn't make really a big difference. The only thing is if you care about like what the inside of your color work looks like. So this is the inside. My dog's drinking water. Hold on. So this is the inside of my cardigan that I'm knitting, and you can see all of the trapped floats. If you're really consistent with how you trap floats, then you have a prettier inside. But that I don't think makes a huge difference on the actual usability and wearability and stretch of the garment. It's just easier to be consistent. So anyways, that's just what I do. And again, this is just me sharing what I personally do. And there are different ways to knit colorwork, and I'm going to take a second to talk about that. This is one way to knit colorwork. There are other ways. You can knit with the strands in both hands. You can knit with throwing, and different methods will actually create a slightly different fabric. And there is a way to knit colorwork so that both strands are the tension is the exact same. Arnie and Carlos talk about that, and they, that is their preferred way to knit colorwork. But it is not the only way to knit colorwork. There's at least 2 or 3 different, at least 2 for sure, different fabrics that you can get. One is where one of the yarns will be dominant, and that's what I'm doing. The foreground color, which I'll get into in a second, will always be dominant the way that I knit. It will kind of come forward, if that makes sense. So there's a different way, which I won't demonstrate, which allows the yarn to have the same tension. So that's just something to be aware of. And if you're interested in more detail about like different ways to knit colorwork, then I would check out, like I already said, Arnie and Carlos and how they knit colorwork. And Roxanne Richardson did a little demonstration on some different techniques for stranded colorwork. So if you want to check her videos out, she kind of shows you, illustrates with the same sample, like different ways of holding the yarn. Okay, so last thing that I'm going to mention before I actually show you my knitting is that in this case the black is the background color, and that whatever color I hold on the right side of my finger, okay, will always be the background color. It's going to recede a little bit. The color on the left, in this case the light brown, is going to be the foreground color, and it's going to come forward a little bit. And that just has to do with the tensioning with this method of stranded colorwork. Okay, so on the left is the color that comes forward. On the right is the color that recedes. And if you knit this way, then you do want to be very aware of always keeping those colors on the correct side, so that the knitting looks even and you don't have issues with a color that's supposed to be receding coming forward and vice versa. Okay, so how I hold my hands, I'll show you that first. And some people tension differently. So I'm just going to, like I said, showing you my way. So what I do is I wrap the yarn over my pointer or index finger, and I do this little trick with my middle finger. So I've got the black on the right, the brown on the left or bottom, and what I do is I take my middle finger and I slide it in between the two. Okay, so I'm going in between the two, and then I go over my index finger and kind of rotate up and point my finger. And what I always do is adjust the yarn. I don't want them to sit right next to each other. I want them to be separated, and I separate them over this knuckle joint. Okay. So what I'm going to start with, and I'll bring this back over here, is the 9 stitches of light brown. Okay. So one more time, I put my middle finger between the two yarns. I go over my index finger. I separate the two colors just over the knuckle, and then I like to have these stitches stretched out a little bit, not too much, and I like to push these stitches up. One warning about this is if you are newer to colorwork or knitting in general, then this can be dangerous. You can drop some stitches if you aren't used to knitting that way. Okay, so 9 stitches, and I'm going to demonstrate what I'm doing right now is going to be a typical. So I'm going to knit 4, I'm going to trap on the 5th, and then I'm going to knit 4 for my 9 stitches. Okay, first up, I mistakenly said it the other way around. Okay, first up is the odd trap, the one that isn't done quite as much as the other. So I've adjusted my yarn, and then I'm going to insert my needle as if to knit, and then I'm going to go all the way behind both yarns. Okay, I'll do that again. So insert as if to knit, take the needle and rotate it completely behind both yarns. Now I'm going to take the needle and continue that motion, but I'm going to lay it down on top of the left yarn pull it around and then through the stitch and off. Okay, and I'll show that just in another second. I'm gonna knit 4. And that's the end of that color section for this round. So I just stretch out that a little bit. That prevents puckering of the fabric. And now I have 7, so I'm gonna knit 3. And this is the more typical trap where you insert as if to knit, you go behind the left strand behind, and then you go around the black on the right strand and pull it out. Okay, and then I'm gonna knit 1, 2, 3. That's my 7, and then I just stretch it a little. And I stretch after every section like that. Okay, let's do the odd trap again. So I'm knitting 4, and then I'm going to do this. What this is doing is it's knitting the foreground color and trapping the background color. Because I'm knitting a large section of light brown, I want to carry that black along the back. Okay, and the way to do this and keep the stitch correctly seated on the needle, so the stitch isn't turned the wrong way, you go through the stitch as if to knit, behind both strands, down on top of the left yarn, around, through the stitch and off. Okay, and that's it. And I'm knitting really slow for you guys so you can hopefully see this really well. There's my 9 stitches, 2, 4, 6, 8, 9, and I picked up a smidge of black right there. Let's see. Okay, so here's my 11 stitches. So I have 11. Oops, don't do that. Okay, always have to have that black on the right. So 11 stitches, I'm going to knit 5. And I'm knitting a lot of black right now, so I want to trap the other color, the light brown, behind the center stitch right here. So I go in through the stitch as if to knit, and I go behind the left light brown color, okay, through the stitch, behind, go around the back, pull the black through. Okay, so I'm still knitting the black, but I'm trapping the brown. And then I'm going to finish out this section of color. Okay, and I'm going to stretch that out so that I am not getting puckering. Okay. At this point, I think what I'll do is just quickly do some more like real time knitting, just to show you what it looks like without slowing down to explain it. Hopefully, let me make sure that you guys can really see me good. So there's 2 ways to trap. One, trapping, one way is, I think, more commonly done, and the other way, I feel like this section, when you're knitting large sections of the foreground color, the contrast color, foreground color, that's not as common, I feel like. So this is the one that I think people, could maybe use some help with. So this one I'm going to go behind both stitches, so just behind both strands rather, pick up, so behind both, lay it on top of the brown, pull it around, and then take the stitch through and off. I was just listening to an interview. Christy Glass was interviewing this lady. Her name is Dana. I forget what her something of happiness. Oh, I can't remember. But she was saying how she finds brioche soothing. And I had to write that word down because, you know, I always use the word meditative. Hold on, I'm gonna, before I knit that, stretch this out. I always use the word meditative, but soothing is really a great way to explain it as well. And she was talking about brioche, but for me, actually, colorwork, knitting colorwork, has the same effect for me. I find it really, really enjoyable. And I was thinking about it recently, and I have this other project that I've started, which is a cabled cardigan. And that project, I want I just want to knit it so that I can have the finished object. And it's not, I don't think I enjoy it to a degree, but I don't enjoy it nearly as much as I enjoy knitting this. This project is, people say, you're a project knitter or a process knitter. I think I'm both, depending on what I'm doing and what I want. Just making sure I'm not making any mistakes. This is the second time I filmed this. The first time I filmed it, I didn't have my little illustration, and I didn't, and I made a couple mistakes. So it's hard when you're trying to knit on camera and you're watching yourself knit through the viewfinder, or you're not watching yourself knit through the viewfinder, and then you end up realizing that you're knitting off screen or something. It's more challenging than you think. But anyways, I want to just say that I feel like some people might look at this as really difficult or maybe too time consuming. You know, my colorwork knitting skills really grew exponentially. When I started, my colorwork looked really bad. The tension was all over the place, and I was like embarrassed. I made I made like a little Christmas ball with a present on it, and I just thought that they were so bad that I was actually embarrassed, but I still showed them off. And I'm glad I have them because you can see just how far I've come. And yeah, we all have humble beginnings, so it's just a matter of practice. And this, you know, once I get a row started, I have my pattern, and this is something I'm designing. This is my own pattern that I'm creating as I go. This is all hand spun yarn. If you don't know, this is hand spun yarn that I made, and it's part of my Shetland Colorwork series. So if you're interested, you can check that out. I hope that this video was helpful for you. I want to try and keep this short, so I hope this video was helpful for you. If I was knitting too fast for you and you want to slow it down, there is actually a way to slow down the video speed in the settings on YouTube. So if you click, I think it's like a little cog, a little wheel. If you click on that and you click on, there should be an option for speed. And if you do that, then you should be able to slow the video down by a certain rate. And then you should be able to watch me knit slower. It'll make my voice talk slower too, but that's just an option that helps you. All right, as promised, I'm finally getting this How I Knit Colorwork video out. I will see you guys shortly. I've been working on so much fun stuff this summer. I have a lot to share, and yeah, see you next time. Bye.